This is Ian sharing a summary of The Displaced Person by Flannery O'Connor is one of her most potent and complex short stories, a tale that exposes pride, prejudice, and moral blindness in a southern farm setting after World War II. Here's a narrative-style summary and reflection. At the center of the story is Mrs. McIntyre, a widowed woman who runs a farm in rural Georgia. She's practical, proud, and primarily concerned with keeping her property running cheaply. When a Catholic priest named Father Flynn brings a Polish refugee, Mr. Guizac, to work on her farm, Mrs. McIntyre sees him as a godsend, a displaced person recently arrived from war-torn Europe, who works harder and more efficiently than anyone she's ever hired. Mr. Guizac's arrival, though, upsets the delicate balance of the farm. His energy and skill make the local workers, particularly Mrs. Shortley and the Negro farmhands, feel threatened. Mrs. Shortley, filled with suspicion and ignorant pride, imagines that these strange foreign Catholics are invading her land. She fills her mind with talk of the end times and foreigners taking over. As Mr. Guizac's improvements continue, fixing machinery, saving money, even planning to bring his displaced cousin from Poland and marry her to one of the local black workers, the social order Mrs. McIntyre depends on begins to crumble. The priest celebrates his goodness, but Mrs. McIntyre sees her comfort and traditions collapsing. When tragedy strikes, the moral choice comes suddenly. One day, while working on a tractor, Mr. Guizac is accidentally caught in its path. The other workers freeze, and Mrs. McIntyre does not move to help. She watches as the man is crushed, and her soul, in that moment of inaction, is laid bare. Afterward, everything falls apart. Her workers leave, the priest stops visiting, and Mrs. McIntyre wastes away, spiritually hollow and physically broken, another displaced person in her own way. Flannery O'Connor uses this story to reveal how grace and prejudice collide in the human heart. Mr. Guizac, the humble and capable refugee, becomes a kind of Christ figure, an outsider whose goodness exposes the moral decay of those who reject him. Mrs. McIntyre, like many of O'Connor's characters, faces the possibility of redemption but turns away from it. Ultimately, the title, The Displaced Person, applies not only to the refugee, but also to everyone who has lost their place in God's moral order. Would you like me to include a brief reflection or moral conclusion, something in the tone of a devotional or a Bible study closing? Here's a reflective closing in a devotional tone, something that could easily follow a study or discussion of The Displaced Person. Flannery O'Connor's The Displaced Person presses us to see what lies beneath polite respectability. Mrs. McIntyre was not a violent woman, but she was a silent one, and her silence at the moment of truth condemned her far more than words ever could. The story reminds us that sin often hides in what we refuse to do, the help we withhold, the compassion we delay, the stranger we ignore. Mr. Guizac's presence, his hard work, his decency, his difference, revealed hearts for what they were. In that sense, he was a mirror of Christ, the foreigner who came among his own, yet his own received him not, John 1:11. The tragedy of Mrs. McIntyre is that she met grace and turned away from it. Her life, once full of motion and control, ended in spiritual paralysis. The displaced man died in body, she died in soul. May we learn from her blindness. May our eyes be open to the strangers, the outcasts, and the displaced people around us. And may our hearts be ready to see in them the image of the one who said, "I was a stranger, and you took me in." Matthew 25:35.